Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to Cocktails and Rocktails with me, your most notorious groupie, Alice Mouse, author of We've Got Tonight, these other little books where you can get that, all my merchandise. I got some funny as shit merchandise. Go check it out on that link tree. And you can see today is going to be a podcast episode, but I'm just going to throw up some random pictures that I have over the years for you guys to look at while we have a little Cocktails and Rocktails story time. But as always, I like to start being thankful for everybody here, all the new people that have been following me, that are coming over to YouTube. You guys, thank you so much. I just truly appreciate all the love, all the support. I welcome all the new people to the family, to everybody that I'm chatting with in the comments that I owe months and months worth of emails to. And in case you haven't noticed, I suck at emails. I'm great at comments and text messages. But the rest of it, I don't know. I'm just horrible at it. So I'm sorry, you guys, if I owe you an email. I'm trying to catch up. It is slowly but surely. And thank you to Sean, to Desiree, to Gen TV, to so many people that have either pushed me to start this, supported me in so many awesome ways. Tina got me different interviews, Diana, Melody, everybody who's come on. You guys rock. You really just show the camaraderie we have on the Rock and Road family. A lot of people don't get it, but we do. So thank you guys so much from the bottom of my heart. And like I said, today we are having the little podcast episode because when I was filming this week, and you saw me before, but I don't know what I ate, but I got really sick. So you don't want to see me right now. Sorry. But today, because we're going to be doing a reading from my book from pretty early on. When I very first kind of stepped to around a concert, really. We're going to kind of talk about that. And because there's buses involved, we're going to have this revision right here. The bougie bus, because, that's kind of what tour buses are. So, all right, everybody kick up your feet, grab your bougie buses, and let's have a little Cocktails and Rocktails. Cheers, big ears. Okay, I can only kind of take a drink of this right now, but it is so good. It's a hazy Northwest IPA, which we know isn't as kind of bitter and strong as, other types of IPAs and stuff. I really do love good Northwest IPA, hazy IPA, you guys. So good. Okay, so let's go. We're going to read from the beginning of chapter 2, number 2. This is Coming Alive in 1985. I just moved to Salt Lake City. Oh, yeah. It felt like summer all the time, even standing knee-deep in the snow. That was the 80s in Salt Lake City. Bands lingered as long as the tour would allow them and crossed our city more than once on every tour. And always there was quite a proper greeting and as always there with a quite proper greeting were the infamous groupies, some better known than others, and I, at the time, was one of the others. Not quite yet a groupie, but oh, so wanting to be one. But that didn't stop me from satisfying my curiosity and my lust for the backstage pass. I had barely climbed into the mountainous city when I called the boy I met in Idaho at the Divorce Central extended stay and made plans immediately for my first new priority, rock and roll. Mom wasn't even sure where the house we were going to live in was. I mean, we already had it, but when I say this, I'm talking direction, like we already had everything set up. I have family in Salt Lake City. My grandfather was president of Kennecott Mining. My uncle was in charge of senior vice president of international affairs. So we already had everything set up. It's just if you live in Salt Lake City, it's such a different setup. So we were kind of lost. And nor did I know what school I would be attending. But I sure as hell knew where I was spending September 2nd, 1985. And that was watching that new metal band called Rat perform at the Salt Palace Arena in my new city's digs. I immediately met up with Eric and headed down to buy tickets. It would be my first actual rock concert. Rock and roll had already caught my attention, and then some back in Kansas City. But that was life at the hotel and not the spectacle that was the live show. As if I wasn't enraptured enough, I had to see the live show. It was the music that attracted me to this life, and the music I had wanted to live and craved more of. And I would soon discover that the concert was where the action continued once everybody left the hotel lobby. It was where I could get more. So, all right, let me explain who Eric was. When my mom and dad were separated, we were in Boise, Idaho, where my grandfather was senior vice president and then president of Sunshine Mining Company. And so we had been staying up there with them while my mom finished her master's in education. So we were staying at this kind of upper extended stay. A lot of people who were divorcing seemed to be there. And one particular guy had his son Eric there with him. And Eric was from Salt Lake City and knew this girl, Bochet, and would tell me stories about how Bobby Blotzer, I hate Bobby Blotzer, from Rat would call her up, or other band, how she always hung out with bands and stuff. And it was so intriguing to me. So when I found out we would be moving to Salt Lake City, where, Kennecott and everything was, and my uncle and everything, my mom's little brother, Eric and I exchanged numbers. So it was like, woohoo. We almost went to the same high school, which he went to Rowland Hall, which was a private Episcopalian school. But my sister and I didn't want to go there. We wanted we were coming from a small town of 500 people. Did we really need to? It was kind of more my mother's idea. My grandmother, she was I love her. They had such wicked sense of humor, but she was also very much prestigious on you got to have everything looking perfect on the outside, so we were supposed to go to Rowland Hall at parochial school, but we decided to go to Brighton High School, which was still called Snob Hill, because some of the students, not us, drove better cars than the teachers. So that's kind of my introduction into Salt Lake City. It's like it was kind of very, whoa, we didn't know anything. It was just all brand new. It was just all, I had no clue what was going on. I just knew my parents were divorced, and all of a sudden here I am with my sister and my mom in Salt Lake City. But I was already bitten by the rock and roll bug. Okay, so back to reading. I got the ticket in my hand after no fanfare whatsoever and stared at it again and again. Not sure what to make of all the numbers on the front, seat this and section that. No idea what any of that meant, as I had never even been to an arena before. I had seen the symphony at the St. Louis Opera House, seen Little Orphan Annie starring my early crush, Yul Brynner, my best friend's brother's frat house party cave, and stuff like that, but never been into the depths of a rock and roll venue. I had no idea what to expect and could barely sleep from the excitement. But after many days and phone calls asking Eric what I am sure were many annoying small-town naive questions, and making sure my coveted ticket was safe in the freezer, if you know, you know, we were finally headed to the famed Salt Palace to see rock and roll in all its pageantry and glory. We would be meeting Danny, my friend from Salem that had migrated the year before, by the front doors. The day had come, and I was about to burst. I didn't know what to wear, so I wore my preppy finest paint-splattered jeans miniskirt, white button-down, and turquoise beaded white moccasins that passed for Midwestern girls' penny loafers. Oh, I loved those moccasins. I was actually born in New Mexico and had family all over New Mexico, so whenever we visited there, we always stopped by, and my family bought a lot of turquoise jewelry, so kind of we always stop by in all the shops and stuff down on the res and really perused, and that's the kind of way we did our big shopping, really. So I had successfully worn this outfit before to a school dance and at the country club back in my small town, and figured it would be just fine for this rock concert. But the second Eric got into the car, I could tell by the look on his face that I was just a little wrong. Mom had been elected to drop Eric and I off at the concert and hopefully find her way home. She followed Eric's directions to the venue and swung the car around the block, pulling it to a stop in front of the legendary palace. From the second I saw it all, I was mesmerized. There were people lined up in one long, thick line, headbanging like a giant rock and roll powwow. Long hair, spandex, and leather dominated the bodies squished together into the silver gates that bound the general admittance ticket holders together. There was music playing from some big radio van. The sweet smell of marijuana wafted about the entire outside of the venue, as if to defy the cops in a cheeky way metal always did in the 80s. Garter belts hanging out of leather miniskirt and hair teased into giant rock and roll bouffants got out of other cars around us and made their way to the flock. Oh, I so did not fit into this, but I wanted to. I saw Danny in the midst of the crowd as Eric and I got out of the car and waved her way. She, having been in the big city a little longer than me, blended in with her black jeans and tiger-striped tank top, where she had saved us a place at the front of the crowd. Mom said her goodbyes and lingered at the curb for a while to make sure I didn't get swallowed up into the debauchery. She was sure that was going to go on in that line. She had a fear. She had a fear that I wouldn't be coming back from the likes of that night, and in a way, I didn't. I had just turned 15 days earlier, and my life was about to change forever in those few hours. Because I don't know who online says my birthday is July 7th, but it's August 29th. I'm a Virgo. I like being a Virgo. Okay, anyway. It was one thing to have already experienced Van Halen and David Lee Roth back in Kansas City, the world's top rock band of the moment at that hotel. But this was camaraderie, energy, testosterone, mixed with lace and aquanet. It was a total sensory overload. And this was just the front of the venue. I shyly walked down the thick concrete through the sun as if it was shining the spotlight onto my small town preppy attire into the metal coliseum. I got looks from the rockers around me, and the girls giggled at how young I must have been despite being the same age. But since I was with Eric, the long-haired, skinny kid that he was, he gave me some kind of rocker cred. And honestly, I didn't care. I was here for the music. To see the band and not impress these people. Besides, I had already had David Lee Roth. Had they? Probably not. I knew even then that despite what I looked like, I had something they wanted and would never get, and that carried me through the snarls. The unwanted attention soon wore off, and we crawled into our places in the line next to Danny. But the damage was done. I could never go to a concert again without donning some sort of spandex and sex appeal. Well, at least for the rest of the 80s anyway. The three of us stood in line, talking, passing a joint, and sipping water from the igloo thermos of the guy behind us. Of course, weed was nothing new to a small-town girl in Missouri. It grew wild in the woods, and cornfields hid prime crops. I had been smoking since I was 13 and was allowed to go to the movies alone with friends. As many of us did back in those days, life was very much fast time Ridgemont High. I did have that, the knack of partying that only a small town can teach a bored kid on the brink. I impressed the Salt Lake City rockers with the fact that Danny and I could smoke more than one hit and not be fuckered up, as they put it. I was starting to break the walls down to my new world, only I was at the wrong entrance. It was about then that I saw these two groupies for the first time. Incidentally, they would last about another year after my friends and I took over the scene. In any case, you couldn't miss them. Nobody could. They were small girls in matching bright blue leather dresses, one with teased up platinum yellow hair and the other black as a rocker's soul, their makeup done in perfect unison and 80s drama. It was as if I was seeing that Real People episode in real life, but the glam metal version. Could this be happening? I was as intrigued by them as I was by David Lee Roth himself moving about the hotel lobby. The girls wandered together as if velcroed to each other's sides, barely glimpsing up from the pavement. It seemed as if they couldn't be bothered to even glance at our piddly little ways. Little did I know then, it was because they were probably drunk from the hotel bar and trying desperately to make it back to the back parking lot where the tour buses full of roadies were waiting. I wondered from where they had descended. Did they just poof into colorful, leather-clad air? Is that how groupies were made? No, this was. This was whenever one young innocent sort of girl sees another groupie in her natural and free habitat, not to mention leather and garters. That is when another is made, and I was looking for the sign-up sheet. In reality, the girls had come from a tall building across the way. I looked up and saw that it was the Marriott Hotel, a building where I would soon be spending more time than my new East Side Snob Hill High School. Why did they come from there? I figured it was for parking. After all, who could find a place in this mess? But as soon as they appeared, the girls disappeared behind the side walls of the building and were headed down the side stairs into God only knows where. After being intrigued for about 10 minutes, both Danny and I turned to Eric and began the tirade of questions about those girls. Where were they going? Why didn't they stand in line with the rest of us? And who were they? Where did they get those clothes like that? He answered as best and quickly as he could, trying to decipher our questions among his now altered state. Turns out they were some groupies that had been around for a while. Their name is Sunny and... Oh God, I can't remember the other girl's name. But they moved to LA not long after, too, as well. About a year and a half later. Let's see. Turns out they were some groupies that had been around for a while and were now his friends, Boucher's arrivals. Boucher's, and were his friends, Boucher's arch rivals. What was a groupie? Danny and I looked at each other with total awe. A groupie is a girl that hangs out with different bands when they play a town. They were going to the buses in the back parking lot. So, seems that rockers didn't fly into town with their super capes to play the shows only to disappear into the rock and roll Batcave afterwards. Huh. Made sense now that the girls were coming from the hotel. Is that where the band stayed? Danny and I looked at each other as if we had just cracked the code of life. This was the second moment of my turning, so to speak. It was the second I realized I could live the dreams I had over my brother's albums back in Missouri. I hadn't just imagined it, I had predicted it. I wanted to go past those side walls and see the urban legends they called tour buses that Eric had just clued me in on. I felt pulled to them, and Danny was willing to yank herself right back there with me. And that was that, the moment I changed. Not back in Kansas City, when I had met Van Halen, but right there behind the Zion curtain. Eric would hold our places, but just as we got the nerve up to leave our front-of-the-line places, the doors opened. The crowd began to move us, as if on a rock and roll conveyor belt towards the general admission area. Danny and I were stuck, for the moment. I aimlessly followed Eric and Danny into the arena, not knowing what to expect and the effect it would have on me, and still does every time I enter the concrete hallways. I was like a tourist in New York City, taken aback and head screeching in all different directions. I just couldn't take it all in at once. I was probably standing there with my mouth agape and not in the rock and roll way. Looking like a complete tourist in a metal world, I saw a big setup surrounded by ironclad horizontal bars with some sort of electric boards and broads adorning it in the middle of the floor, the FOH. Guys with little plastic cards hanging from around their necks attended to these rock and roll vixens like they were some sort of Miss Americas. The girls they coveted behind the steel gates were dressed in bright, skimpy dresses that hung on them like white did on rice, and looking not much older than me. They seemed to have these old gits mesmerized like sirens did ancient sailors. I wondered how they did that. How did they get into this private little space to be untouchable and have those men hooked like a big mouth bass? I wanted to do that. I wanted to be the sex part of rock and roll. I wanted to be the Philotes of rock and roll. If you don't know who that goddess is, look up Philotes. But because okay, hold on, let me read that again. I wanted to be the sex part of rock and roll because, as I was just learning, it was the sex part that drove this world and the music that it made. And these girls seemed to have it all in the palm of their hands. And who wouldn't want that? I followed Danny and Eric to the front of the floor, lingering on the cage scene before turning my head towards where we were going, and noticed the stage for the first time. Holy shit! This was like nothing I had ever seen. It was surrounded by thousands or so lights and bookend by speakers that climbed up taller than any building in my small town of Salem, Missouri. There were more men with plastic cards around their necks running around on it and doing who knows what with chords and guitars. Real life guitars. I'm not sure I had seen a real one ever before either. All the guys I knew in Salem's were preppies or jocks and had rifles. I was instantly tingling throughout my whole body when I saw that stage. Between the instruments, the men dominating it, and the testosterone that took over the fresh outside air, I almost couldn't breathe. Danny nudged my side to try and bring me back to life, or at least stop me from looking like a mouth breather. I looked over at her and I saw it. What I felt on the inside was written all over her face, too. It was that look. You know, the one where Dorothy finally finds Oz. I felt like we were about to slip down the rock and rabbit hole and wanted to jump in head first. Only I didn't know how. I didn't know how to get through the gates that these guys with the plastic cards took the sexy young vixens past right before they were swallowed up behind the giant hanging black curtains. But just because I didn't know how to doesn't mean I couldn't get there, because get there and then some is exactly what I was about to do. Just then, the arena lights went black, and the music began to blare from the monumental speakers. The stage lights began to frantically beam around the crowd. Cheering took over the minds of the general admission masses, and they all in unison turned their attention to the men coming onto the stage. Legs sprawled around the stage, and roadies ran to make room for the rocker egos that were about to grace the platform. Big hair and spandex stuffed with little imagination sprang into action while the drums signaled the hedonism. Bon Jovi, who was actually Rat's opening act on this tour, took the stage and all my concert innocence along with it. I looked at the men holding these guitars and undressing every girl in the audience in their heads. I felt a rush through my whole body and the need to become one with this whole circus, and not in a standing in the front row kind of way. I felt the instant urge to bare my nubile breasts and streak into full rock and roll hedonism. I wanted to connect with the men on stage and the men who could give me the golden ticket, in the same way Charlie wanted to connect with Willy Wonka. I didn't just want to visit the chocolate factory, I wanted to own it. And that was that. By the end of the show, I was a goner. Immediately after the show was done and over, my heart sunk to the nasty, trash-laden floors of the arena. I was not ready to give this up yet. Eric had to drag Danny and I out of the Salt Palace with the promise that he would show us the back parking lot where these mythical tour buses were parked. And he said the band would probably come out and sign some autographs. Oh, okay then. I was so excited to get there that Eric had to try and keep up with me. We headed down an impossibly tall flight of stairs on the outside of the arena and turned a corner before passing a cinder block wall. Barely past the wall, I was agape all over again. There they were, these rock and roll homes on wheels, the buses. They were theme-painted cylinders with few scattered windows to the front and the back. I was mesmerized by the aura they exuded and felt the pull of their lure dragging me closer to my destination. We came to a stop on the sidewalk, merely feet away from them, and I looked into the lighted windows at the action. The same girls I saw on the metal fortresses in the middle of the crowd were now hoisting drinks and lapping up the attention of the card-draped men. Laughter and hedonism seemed to be ringing out of the doors as if to taunt the rest of us. Heads went down for some sort of pleasure. Oh, wow, I did write that. Whether it was up the nose or in the mouth, I don't know. Either way, I wanted to be in there, but with the band. And the band, Rat! I had an immediate need for the lead singer, Stephen Piercy. The second his ball-stuffed spandex made their way onto the stage, I liked his energy, the way he smiled on stage as if he knew he could slide his COCK into any woman he wanted, and he could. His long, dark, curly hair hung over one eye, seducing my curiosity and dredging up the wicked bitch in me that wanted to come out and play. He made me want to be a bad girl and wear stockings with those tiny little string panties. I didn't know what thongbacks were yet. Now I just don't wear them. True. All right. He and the rest of the band had come out of the backstage doors already draped with young girls on each side. One of them was Eric's friend he had told me about before, Bo. She was being trophied by the drummer. Eric waved her way to get her attention, as the guys deposited their bounty for the night onto the band's private coach. And just as Eric predicted, the guys started down towards the sidewalk that separated us from their world. It was as if the gods were coming to the edge of the heavens to grace the humans with their presence. I scrambled in my little girl purse to find some paper to use as an excuse to talk to Stephen Piercy. Once I knew these guys were accessible, I knew there would be no stopping me. I made my way past Eric as he talked to Bo and Danny as she made her way for the guitarist. It was like we were all taking our rightful places for initiation. I could not believe I was standing here so close to the man that was making my little girl hormones do a pole dance in my panties. It's true. If I wanted, I could reach out and just touch him, feel his tan skin, and maybe even squeeze that bulge at his pants to see what it was really made of. Yeah, that went through my mind. Finally, after some secret eye sex with him, Stephen turned his body towards me, looking for the paper to aimlessly sign. He looked up to me as he asked my name for the autograph. I didn't think he expected to find a cute little innocent girl standing on the edge of rock and roll. Stepping back, he took me in with his lecherous eyes. "Well, hello, Allison," he said as if the surprised little Midwest innocents had gone unnoticed in the crowd. "Don't you look sweet?" All I could do was blush and say, "Thanks." The shy little tomboy with the mullet had just come out to stop me from reaching the brass ring. Because I was like, before I, kind of discovered the Madonna bob and, mini skirts and stuff, I was a tomboy, mullet-wearing tomboy, like fishing, and I still love the fishing stuff, but golfing, fishing, playing outside, climbing trees, the usual. Playing with cows. I never tipped him. Come on now. I tried. They were too heavy for me. Anyway, I didn't. I'm kidding. That was mean. I love animals. Okay. All I could do was blush and say, "Thanks." The little shy tomboy with the mullet had just come out to stop me from reaching the brass ring. Stephen made more conversation. Something about how I didn't look like I was from here. Salt Lake City's metal scene had a definitive attitude and look, so I was definitely a tempting intruder to this scene. Good for the rockers that were scouting out fresh meat to keep their most favored rock and roll mecca, but bad for the old girls who would soon be tossed out in favor of the new guard. Soon, and with Stephen still making small talk with me, the guitarist and bass player came over. I asked for their John Hancocks and Danny came to my side. I could feel Eric and Bo to the left of our little group eyeing us. Bo could see what was going on. She saw it before I did. 2 new groupies were being born and could be a very real threat to the old guard's way of life. But that's rock and roll, always trying to keep its youth by bringing in new girls. And okay, don't take this wrong. This is so wrong. It's like these guys are not predators first and foremost. And I'm not being a bitch to the other girls. It's just Salt Lake City was a very competitive scene. And it's just like the modeling world that gets replaced by the new it girls or the social scenes in New York, like the club kids and stuff. There's always going to be a new it girl every season. It just happened to be the beginning of our season. Okay. Bo began to move closer as her drummer turned his attention to our group and not her. The bass player Juan contemplated an offer to smoke some of the weed I had Eric get for me, especially for the occasion. Stephen came over and invited us to the bus, but we had two things that inhibited that from happening. Number one, Eric. Guy fans were not exactly invited along, and some were actually standing on the sidewalk waiting for their girls that were getting autographed on Bon Jovi's bus. Quote unquote, autographed. Shh. Left a little their DNA behind there. We couldn't leave Eric. He was, after all, the bard that had led us to this golden world of debauchery. Second was my mom, who had just come around the corner of the arena in that Caprice Classic and was honking her way down the street right towards us. Oh my God, I was just starting to feel all grown up and sophisticated, and here comes the honk honk. Mom! Oh God! I could not have been more mortified and pretended I didn't hear the honking. Danny slid herself to the left of Robin Crosby, one of two guitar players in Rat, so that my mom couldn't see her. But my mom had seen me, all right. She pulled over across the street, laying off the horn, and waited, her eyes sending out lasers that burned up the back of my whole body. Because a lot of people don't realize, they think, oh, she must have had shitty parents. No, my mom was an absolute amazing woman. She was incredibly strong. She was very doting. She tried to stop us from getting to me and Danny from getting to because she was like a second mom to Danny. But she just decided best she could do was be there for us at 3:00 in the morning when we called and needed a ride home. She never left. She never let us go without feeling loved, and she knew she would always be there. And she was a very respected educator, not just in the state, but around the United States. And she used to help women from the FLDS, like Warren Jeffs and stuff, escape. So, pretty fucking amazing woman, my mom. Okay. Danny says and waited. While a complete meltdown happened inside my body, I had to decline Stephen's offer for a good time, because my mom was here to get me. There was no denying that the woman in the black and silver Caprice Classic parked yards behind me was there to mortify me. Mom, however, seeing I was getting autographs and meeting new people, decided to sit silently and let me have my moment. From then on, she always sat quietly waiting for me. At home, of course, but by the phone, just in case her girls needed her as we went out to discover rock and roll. I thought that seeing I was young enough to still have to rely on my mom for transportation would be the ending of my hopeful groupie career. I thought they would see the jailbait that was standing in front of them and run like cockroaches from the daylight. But I was wrong. I had just become even more tempting just as I had been back in Kansas City. I knew right there and then I could be a tempting little nymph. I saw the look on this lead singer's face. It showed his desire to ruin what he thought no man probably had. It was the same look I had seen on David Lee Roth's face at the Hyatt back in Kansas City. And I kind of liked being able to make these grown men topple. Oh, are we kidding? I didn't like it. I loved it. I mean, people think it's always like the groupies are no. It's like I had a taste of what I wanted to be and how I wanted to seduce these men. I wanted to be Philotes, the goddess of sex, friendship, love, connection, stuff like that. I wanted to be. And I'm not saying it's because of beauty or anything like that. It's something that you have on the inside. And that's what I wanted, I wanted to make these men topple. I wanted them to come after me, to invite me into their world, to open up their arms to me. So that's what I wanted. And I wanted them on their knees begging for more. What woman doesn't, Okay. I like that the man with all this musical power could potentially become putty in my inexperienced little hands. It was like the whole Vegas strip of lights had just been turned on in my head. I had an epiphany. I knew who I was. Strong-ass woman. Eric came over with Bo as she grabbed the arm of her drummer and quietly led him back to the bus and back to her wiles. Danny finished talking to the other guitar player, and Stephen made a joke about the next time they came into town. Don't bring your mom before hugging me goodbye. I was like, don't worry, I won't bring my mom ever again. But my mom was cool. Like, she met some of the guys in Metallica and other bands and stuff like that. And she bitched a lot of them out if they called after 10 p.m. James Hetfield, Mike Clark from Suicidal Tendencies, Neil Diamond. No, I'm kidding. She didn't bitch out Neil Diamond. Okay. He did call, though. Next time they were in town, that line got... Next time they were in town? That line got the wheels in my dirty little girl head spinning. I was already instinctively plotting in my head as the three of us walked away from the world I was soon to be dominated by. I had not even crossed the street to my mom's car before I was planning my next outfit. I had no idea Rat would be back or any other band when Rat would be back or any other band for that matter, but I already made up in my mind about what I wanted to be by the time that happened. I was going to be a groupie. For my first week in the so-called big city, I was off to a good start. So there you guys go. That's kind of how my groupie career kind of started. It was instinct, kind of growing up as a child, looking at my brother's albums, sneaking into his room, being like, oh, I want to marry Ace Frehley that I saw without their makeup. I'm like, nah, don't. But yeah, I mean, I heard Ace is hung like a horse, so anybody got any on that? Anybody down in the comments? But yeah, I mean, it was just an instinct. And when a woman who is going to follow this path is put in front of it for the first time, it was just, oh my God. It was just, it just was, like I said, an epiphany. It just all made sense. It made sense of what I wanted, was looking at those albums and pretending in my room with, Paul McCartney and Sean Cassidy. Hi, Sean Cassidy. Just in case you're listening. You still hot? You still hot? Yeah. Okay. Hey, Sean. But anyway, but you know what I mean? And John Taylor from Duran Duran. Oh, God, when Duran Duran came out, that was it for me. That was, the loin started happening. But there you guys go. There's kind of my introductory into rock and roll in the quote-unquote big city, because Salt Lake City, as we know, was not the biggest city in the world at the time, but coming from a town of 500, it sure as fuck was to me. And it started everything that you're reading about now. So tell me, ladies, what was your first inkling? What was it that you kind of looked and it made sense that all those feelings were coming to fruition, and how you were going to express them and how you were going to be? And like I said, from early on, I was like, oh, I want to be the woman that I want to be this little groupie that makes them all desire more. And what was your first concert experience like? Like the first time you stepped in and you saw those lights, because it was just so much. And I mean, it's just crazy because, looking back and seeing the girls on the FOH and all the guys with their laminates and the gates opening up and the laughter and the fun and the camaraderie we used to have at the shows and everybody hoisting their lighters during the ballads. I mean, just the whole thing, the crowd, people dancing, getting on each other's shoulders, flashing tits. I mean, the arena packed, everybody just sing the pyromania of Pyrotex. Love it. It was beyond love at first sight for me. Was it for you? Tell me down in those comments. And thank you to everybody who made it through the whole episode today. You guys rock. I really, really appreciate you guys listening to me and just kind of, immersing yourself into my story, because it's just awesome when people do. So, thank you guys so much for all the love, all the support. And so much welcome to all the new people to this family we have here. I just make yourselves at home. Feel free to comment down in the, to have conversations down in the comments with all of us. Everybody here is so awesome and welcoming. Like, it's like an 80s rock concert down here. So we appreciate that, and I love it. So thank you guys. I couldn't do it without you. So while you're just lingering about, if you're just up in the nosebleeds and you want to become backstage, you want to hang with the fam, hit the subscribe, become a member, hit the share, hit my bells, and we'll see you next time on Cocktails and Rocktails. Cheers, big ears.